All right, I have the great pleasure of interviewing Johnny Akzam, candidate for Minnesota Congressional District 1. And we need more people like Johnny Akzam in Congress. Johnny, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. I've been following you, well, since the revolution started.
Well, I appreciate it. You know what? Let's go ahead and let's just start off. And if in the chat, live chat, if there's any issue at all with the sound, let me know. But Johnny, tell everybody about yourself and why Johnny Akzam needs to be in Congress. I already know you're a fantastic candidate, but give everybody, I guess, a little information about you, your value system, and why Congress needs you.
Well, one of the things about me is I've always just cared about other people my entire life. And when I see people suffering, it doesn't matter if it's your neighbor, a stranger, I believe it's your obligation to help them. So as a society, as a collective government, we have to have those kind of values. And one of the things that I carry along with me in my journey is that if we can't take care of the least among us, the most vulnerable, then we're not doing our jobs as a society. And I think we've fallen short on that a lot. We've seen it in the criminal justice system. I'm 45, so I'm a Gen Xer. And I experienced all of this through the 90s. And I watched as our nation began to separate. And it is separated right now. We have two classes that are wielding power over the rest of the masses. And that's the wealthy and, well, I mean, they're all wealthy, but there's some that are wealthy and just wealthy, and some that are wealthy with the power. And those are the ones that are making life very difficult for everybody.
What is it about Bernie's revolution or movement that inspired you? And if you could kind of give Johnny maybe three to five policies that Bernie was advocating that you advocate and that inspired you to go into politics.
Well, one of the first ones and main ones was Medicare for all. When they were talking about that in the 90s, I voted for Bill Clinton. I was just old enough then to vote for my first president. And I remember them talking about it. And it made perfect sense to me as a young person that that's the way it should work. And I've always been an inquisitive person, so I would do my own research and read up on things. And I knew that it was working in other countries. And it just didn't make sense that we weren't doing it because we're supposed to be the best at everything. So that was one of the first things that kind of got my ear, because that was the big ticket item that we've been fighting for so long. And then we get into things like free college for at least 2-year colleges. My goodness. I talked to people because it was a little before my time, but there was a time just before me where the generation was getting their college for next to nothing or basically free. And I don't think we should be putting people in mountains and mountains of debt, more than a house in some cases, just to become better human beings. That's what education is to become a better human being to serve the rest of human society, right? Nobody goes to college to get into a profession to go be a hermit. It's always in some sort of profession that serves other people, benefits the rest of society. And we shouldn't be punishing people for that. We get into our foreign policy issues, the Iraq War, the way we've done in the past. We've got, well, you know, you've talked about them all. I mean, your YouTube channel is full of it, with the way the government has gone in, where we went into Iraq and, you know, we removed that dictator and now it's a shambles. We went into Libya, or removed that dictator, and now it's a shambles. There seems to be no backup plan. And it's all just go in all the guns a-blazing and we'll deal with it and clean it up later. Well, the reason that is because it's being run by corruption that that contracts out all of the rebuilding efforts. So they contract this out to all their buddies that are going through the revolving door, and it's a never-ending cycle of the military-industrial complex, and it has to end. The other thing was, the key thing was election reform, finances, the whole thing, getting money out of politics, changing our electoral college system. I was in junior high at least, and I knew that wasn't a good system. So those are some of the main things that really grabbed a hold of me, because those are the big ticket items that are going to change our society for forever.
So let's go ahead and, in terms of your candidacy, I guess give me some background. What is your background with Justice Democrats, and in terms of your opponent, or in terms of how your campaign is being addressed by other progressives, what role did Justice Democrats have with you, and what's the deal now with that organization?
Well, I released the phone call we had, yesterday, and really Justice Democrats hasn't been a big force here in Minnesota. To be quite honest with you, it was a tertiary nominating. We've been working with our revolution since Nina took over has been like, that was the saving grace for that. Because we pretty much know that Nina's not going to play games. She's going to come in and straighten things up, and that's the way it's going to be. Hopefully, that's what we're hoping. And it seems to be working, because they've broken down the system down to small units, and that's how endorsements go. So what happened with Justice Democrats is we got nominated. I got a phone call. I know I'm the only Bernie candidate in the race. I've made a lot of quite a bit of hoot to do about that in my escapades around the Democratic units. And there's a handful of Bernie people in the Democratic units, but obviously most of his support in this district came from just outside the party in 2016, because he took this district 2-1 nearly. And those people didn't just, I think they still live here. So that's kind of why I think this district is calling for that message. So I had a phone call with Justice Democrats. They, were interviewing me for the endorsement. And of course they asked about a couple candidates that are in the race. There's like 5 other candidates vying for the endorsement in the DFL, which is the Democratic Farm and Labor Party of Minnesota, which is the Democratic Party. And, going through all of their questions and all of checking off the boxes, and everything looked good. And this was in September. And I figured it sounded positive coming from their end that we would, get the endorsement. Now, I didn't know anything about any of the fine details, and I figured that would come if they decided to endorse. My conception of it was, they're going to endorse, they're just going to send out an email, say, hey, give this guy some, some help, and I would hopefully get some donations, which our campaign needs. We're in a strange race. With so many candidates, people are holding back support till the endorsement. Other candidates I've got money, but it's from where they've gotten it. That's the question. And so I was kind of thinking, hey, TYT has this huge following of people. If they're going to be supporting candidates, vetting them, and releasing endorsements about them, that's a good thing. Getting the whole network of the progressive movement kind of knowing these candidates. And if they want to give them $5, you get 1,000 people listening to your show right now, johnnyakzam.com, that want to give $5. It only takes 1,000 people. That could really make a big difference in a House race for a small candidate that just needs some, gas money, some literature, and, a few essentials that you need for like online stuff. It doesn't take a whole lot until you start getting into the general. But by then, we have the endorsement, we have the backing of the party, hopefully, we have the backing of more people. But that didn't happen. I didn't get the endorsement.
But just really quickly, can you explain? So you mentioned that you were you're the only Bernie candidate. There's no other person you're running against on the Democratic side that has Bernie's principles in mind, or?
Well, no. Look, there are some that say they have those principles in mind. Here's the problem. Everybody's a progressive now. Everybody's in our governor's race. Tina Liebling, who's the state representative here in our area, is running for governor. She introduced Bernie in Rochester, Minnesota. She's a Bernie candidate. She's an our revolutionary. She don't take flack. And, when the other people come up on stage, you listen to them and you kind of look, it's like, where were they? Not just about Bernie. It's not just about Bernie. It's about where were they in the past in all of this. My progressive roots I stumbled upon from a college paper in 2002 after I met Paul Wellstone and I was on the student senate and I was kind of politically active in that way. I wrote a paper called The Paradox of Progress in America. And this was in 2002. Mm-hmm. And I published it on our website because I didn't even remember the content of it. And I stumbled upon it looking for another article I wrote about the objectivity of women in media. See, I have a history of these beliefs. This isn't political expedience for me. This is how I feel about life and how I want to see people succeed. So what I look for when I listen to my opponents speaking, I don't look at them as opponents. I listen to them as though I'm one of their constituents and they're trying to buy me over because maybe they would, right? But as I dig into it, the things they are saying aren't matching the history. There's no history there.
And it's Justice Democrats. Did they side with your opponent or?
No, they said they're not going to endorse the race. So if they do, then we'll be interested in why.
And who is who is your chief or principal opponent?
I guess for me it would be Rich Wright. Rich Wright, and I don't want to say anything bad about Rich. I like Rich, but he went to the Our Revolution Founders Convention and didn't get in because he wasn't registered. I was in there because I was registered, and I ended up with, I'm a founding member as a result. That was the founding convention, and I hold that with a bit of pride. I gave him a little flack. He was there out in the lobby, and hey, what's going on? How come you're not inside playing with the rest of us? And I couldn't get in, and the reason I gave him flack is because when he gave his release, in the paper, he said he's the most progressive candidate. And so everybody that's in the Bernie crowd kind of, hey, what are you talking about? There's somebody else running that's, kind of, you might not be the most progressive. So I slapped him on his shoulder and I said, so what's the most progressive candidate doing at the Founders Convention and not being registered? And he laughed and I laughed, just a little ribbing. But I was actually a little serious about it. And he knew because I had a meeting with him personally following that up. I told him, I think he's a good guy. I think he has good intentions, but he doesn't have the historical integrity.
And do you think that Justice Democrats will endorse him? And why hasn't Justice Democrats endorsed you?
Well, I asked him, and he didn't give me a reason. I actually released it. It's on the phone call. He said, well, he tried to use our current conversation as an excuse, saying, well, now I'm questioning your people skills, but that's not it. He didn't give a reason. He just said, we just didn't. We strategically decide where we're going to put our energy, and they used the same excuse. He used the same excuse for SEMA. He said they don't want to go after a Texas race because it's so expensive. So, okay, I get it. Then why did you even call to have an endorsement interview with me if you weren't interested in the seat at all?
Did they?
That's
Who scheduled that interview? Was it you calling them or them calling you?
no. They emailed our campaign. Nominations. You go to their website. So people nominated us, of course, because we told them, go on Facebook and Twitter, go to these groups and give us nominations. We're the progressives. And so eventually when they sifted through, they got to us, and I guess they had already looked at our website and social media and all that, as I would expect them to do. So they got to the point of having an actual interview. We scheduled it. They sent us an email. I scheduled it with them. It was going to be just a phone call, and we had the phone call, and it went great. I was excited. I really was, because I thought, God, this is a turning point in our financial aspect, because we need financial help. There's no doubt about it. Our opponents have taken quite a big bit of money from other places. They've got quite a bit of cash, and I hate that we need money. It bothers me. I hate asking for it. I don't want to take people's money to do something that I would do for free anyway. It sucks. I've had friends that have, said, hey, I need this done at my house. You want to come earn a couple bucks or something. And I said, yeah, they said, what are you going to charge me? And I said, it's so hard because I would normally just do this for you. I wouldn't even ask for anything. So this financial aspect of it is one of the harder parts of my personal campaign, asking for money, especially after what happened. We saw the trust disintegrate with so many hundreds of thousands and millions of people to turn around and say, oh, but wait, I'm going to just give me, it's so hard. So that's why I thought it was important to align with the organizations that are in the network of progressives that are going through vetting people and kind of that they trust. They say, hey, if they're okay with JD, then they're okay with me. If they're okay with Brand New Congress, they're okay. If they're okay with our revolution, DSA, Socialist Alternative. There's a lot of groups out there that people are aligning with that all have the same values and principles behind them, or are supposed to anyway. And I think that if TYT would have decided to put together, because that's basically what it was. It was Sank, and some other people, and they decided to put some things together and help progressives, which I think is great. I think if they would have just used their platform to do what they did for Allison, but do it in a more open and legitimate way.
Can you go ahead and explain who Allison is and what they did for her? And
yeah, well, I suppose you'll be talking to David tomorrow, as I saw your announcement. And I met David
Monday. I'm going to interview David Monday.
Yeah, Monday. Sorry. I met David at the People's Summit, and he seemed like a great guy. This was back in June. He was campaigning before that. He was already moving. And so according to him, he started in March. I met him in June, kind of, connected with him online and followed along his campaign and gave that online support. We're not really into major endorsements at this point. But yeah, just kind of, sharing things of his and backing him up on social media. And then all of a sudden there's this big flash notice that Justice Democrats, who I just kind of felt are in the mix of the whole thing, right? Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, PCCC, and Our Revolution are kind of those organizations that they're not party oriented in that way. They're just like, let's get candidates together and let's get support for them, and let's do that. So I heard that Justice Democrats put out this candidate, and it's Allison, what's her last name? Houston, is that right? And it just, that in and of itself, didn't matter who it was like a total shock to me and obviously a bunch of other people, because David has been hitting the bricks and wearing out shoe leather. And I get he's a white male. That works. Well, it does. In our side of trying to make things better, we do understand that we want to be attentive of representation of everybody.
Well, Bernie also was a white male. Is a white male.
I'm saying that in this climate, with progressive climate, it does actually, in some cases, work against a candidate. Yeah. There are other candidates that meet identity roles. We know that the Democrats did that for a long time, and I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with trying to make sure that there's diversity in representation. But it's not a reason to pass off somebody for somebody else. In my opinion, you just can't do that. It turns out that the way the Justice Democrats do their endorsements is much like we envision the DNC. They take these applications, they obviously investigate to whatever degree they do, and then they have a room of just a few people that, like, you know, the judges on American Idol, before the live shows, start going through them and saying, yeah, no, yeah. And look, they have their right to do that. Obviously, they are an organization that makes their own rules. I did not know that's how they would do it, considering everything that we've talked about in the last year. It was surprising, but they had that right. And in the conversation I had with,
yeah, but I don't think they have. I mean, my 2 cents, I don't think they have the right to, like, commandeer Bernie's movement or try to.
That's the argument. That's exactly the argument that I was trying to get across to him, is that you, under the guise of the progressive movement and the progressive policies that we try to live by, ranked choice voting, inclusive selection processes, those types of things, I wouldn't think that you would go this route, because it's against, I mean, Our Revolution, they did that for 2017, okay? That was kind of a push, right? I got that. And I was wondering, well, what are they going to do 2018? Well, it turns out they changed their rules and said, we're going to push it all down to locals. If you want to get an endorsement, create a local chapter, get people involved, and have them and nominate you and endorse you through the local and state chapters and all that. That's the way it should be. Grassroots is exposing the smallest segment of society to their own power in government. That's what grassroots.
And I agree. And I think that one thing that's disingenuous is that Justice Democrats has the Young Turks, and TYT and Cenk Uygur have what, like 3 million subs or whatever. And it's like, it's not fair for a fantastic candidate like you and Seema and others who don't get the luxury of being chosen in the back room by Justice Dems and then publicized on YouTube to 3 million people.
That is the argument that I was making with him, and I'm hoping that we're making some progress. He said he talked to Hector a couple days ago. Hector Morales is another person that had dealings with Brand New Congress, which, for those who don't know, Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats are now one and the same. They are an affiliate on top of an affiliate, and they're revamping.
So TYT has 2 sub entities.
Well, not technically. It's one sub entity and an affiliate.
So basically, they're monopolizing. they've had a pretty.
And now it's changing. It's merging right now. Last week they announced that they also merged with that other movement. Gosh, I can't remember because I got so distracted with this, but they just brought on a whole bunch of people. And that was my point to Justice Democrats, is that, listen, if you're going to have that much power, with great power comes great responsibility. And if you're going to profess these things to people, if you're going to say, hey, we believe in these things, we believe in opening the process, then your own processes should reflect that. That's all my argument was to them. And I don't care about my endorsement, to be honest with you at this point. We're having another Our Revolution meeting. I really believe that Our Revolution has more of a sustainable focus in mind.
Well, I mean, I'd rather be affiliated with Nina Turner than Cenk Uygur any day.
Well, I got to say, she's pretty fantastic.
But my question, though, is I think you might have mentioned, but I know several people on Twitter have mentioned the consulting fees that Justice Democrats might be charging consulting fees. Can you tell everybody about that?
Okay, so what he said about that was that because of the way the businesses are structured, the way the PACs and the LLCs and some of it I do understand. Again, I'm not one of those accountant type IRS people, but I do understand. I do my own research. I can read. So, anything that they do for the candidates, they can't do anything for them for free, because it's actually counted as in kind, which is work, which is money. And so all of these different things like sending out broadcast, because originally what BNC was supposed to be is going out, finding candidates, building them up, and helping them all the way through the process from start to finish, consulting, media, the whole 9 yards, kind of like, I guess you would say, a campaign management organization, like our whole team is going to run from candidate to candidate to candidate and give you all this power, which in theory sounds really great. I don't know. He says that he's going to change they have already.
Who's he?
What's his name? Sikat. I got to read his name. It's on my video. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
He's the head of both of them, and it said that he's changing the affiliation. There's only going to be one. It's just going to be Justice Democrats now, and everybody's salaries, everything everybody's going to make is going to be able to be seen in the next filing, I guess. Again, that stuff in our conversation.
And Johnny, the interesting thing, my vantage point is this. I want them to make money. Go ahead and make money. Do whatever they need to do to make money. If Kyle and Cenk want to make a lot of money, great. But don't say, my vantage point is, don't say the Democratic Party is afraid of Justice Democrats or that they're now the next evolution of Bernie Sanders. This is, from what I see, politics is not only politics as usual, the same paradigm that destroyed Bernie's chances. So like you said, the DNC, when you have a small group of people with immense power to say yay or nay, you're setting the paradigm for whatever Cenk Uygur or TYT, whatever their brand.
Right. And that's
so
the argument.
Yeah, and I just think like,
I'm sorry, but to touch on that Allison and David thing, his argument is we want to get more progressives into the election process. Isn't it great to have more progressives? Well, yes, but not if you're pitting them against each other and they're going to lose the nomination or the endorsement to the Democratic, centrist or corporatist.
And it wouldn't be as bad if TYT didn't have the media pull. That's the issue.
That's where the other part comes in, is that he doesn't understand the thinking. Well, I mean, we do. I understand. You understand. I understand it. With that power, everybody knows that Cenk is related to JD. So any JD that goes out, it's pretty much it's kind of related to TYT, even though they're separate entities. You can't separate those things. You can't separate how how popular this is, create something else from that, and then pretend like it has no influence whatsoever. It has influence. And when you interview people on a 3 million platform, 3 million subscriber platform, that's a much bigger influence than you or Jimmy Dore or Tim Black. And you guys, I hope you guys continue to grow, because we need you guys so badly. Not everybody can understand the news the way they tell it on the media. And I love Jimmy Dore's take on it because he's a comedian. And
I love Jimmy Dore. I love Jimmy Dore. I love Tim Black. Cenk Uygur I find to be disingenuous, but yeah.
The reason I love you is because you're kind of like me. You kind of go right at it and you just say how it is. And I have to be a little more careful now because I'm running. I can't just blurt out things, and I've got to watch my language, of course. My cussing's got much better. I mean, as a former construction worker and things like that, I mean, hanging around with normal, regular, everyday people, your language you have to hone your language so that you're not offensive to other people and stuff like that. And I understand that. That's part of the role and responsibility that I have as a representative. It's to be able to articulate the needs of my district in Washington in a way that gets the message through, but says, I'm not going to back down from these because this is what we want. This is what these people want. And there's a lot more that we can do when we come back from Washington. Then I don't know what some representatives do, but I think it's a representative's responsibility. They should be campaigning. Not campaigning, but they should be going around just like they were campaigning, saying, how's everything going? We got this bill passed. We couldn't get this done because we had blocks here. As a matter of fact, our neighbor north, if there's a Republican somewhere, let's go put some pressure on them because they're voting for this. And just like Bernie said, it doesn't stop after you get elected with the people's support. I actually want to have a precinct database. I don't know if I'll start it through my website, where people, all the precincts can have a hub, a precinct contact, and they can put their 2 cents in for issues, And
Johnny, how can people, if they want to donate to your campaign, Johnny Akzam, how do they donate to you? How do they find out more about you?
Well, if you can't remember how to spell my name, you can go to johnnyprogress.com. We're hoping to turn that into a comic strip. It's going to be a progressive superhero that goes around saving society from, ill-gotten policies. I just happened to buy that domain, and it points to my website as well. But johnnyakzam.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter. The name's the same across. And on our donation page, you can choose whichever way you want to donate. We've got verified through a multitude of different sources because we know people don't like Act Blue, but we know people do like Act Blue. We know that people trust CrowdPack. We know that other people don't. We know that people don't trust anybody and want to give directly to the candidates. So you got all those options there. And if you want to send a check, you can go to the Come Join Us page and get the address. But I mean, it is important that if people around the network, I've given to other candidates myself online, $5 here, $5 there, because it's important that we support the candidates who are willing to stand up with the values that we know are being talked about, but not implemented. I mean, the Democratic Party, the DNC especially, will talk an issue to death until it comes time to vote for it. And we got to stop. When we know the facts, we've got to follow them. We've got to go with them. We know Medicare for All is the most logical and financially, fiscally responsible method of providing health care. The details will have to be worked out, but we know it's the right path to go down.
Well, Johnny, I want to thank you so much for the interview, and I wish you the best of luck. And what are
I
you? When is the? What date is the election? So people in Minnesota, can rally around you.
Okay, well, this is the three-tiered process, right? With it delegates down. So our first push is February 6th, where we're going to get out and have our precincts, and then people have to stay for 3 hours, 4 hours, all night, and go through the process and say, I want to be a delegate and I want to be an alternate, and then they got to go to the next level. And then they got to say, I want to be a delegate. Then they go to the next level and say, I want to vote for Johnny. Um, I'd much rather prefer ranked choice voting. I think it's a much more logical, because that's basically what the caucusing is. It's live action role playing ranked choice voting with delegates. The problem with it, the grassroots aspect is wonderful. The pulling of people together and having them talk it out and say no, and then some people change their minds. I like that. What the problem is the length of time people have to dedicate to it. They
Mm.
don't have that time anymore. And if we could put it in a system where you could partake in online in an app, some way where, I don't know about
Let
it.
me ask you a question. I don't know if it's feasible because I've never, ran for Congress, but I mean, have you ever thought of starting a YouTube channel?
Oh, I've got a YouTube channel.
You have one.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there you go.
I just haven't been pushing out a lot of videos because as we've been going, we started out going through the DFL units, and I stuck to my message, and I picked out, the people who wanted to hear the message that it was still going on. Hey, the movement's not in here, folks. It's out there. So if you want to follow along, come join us, because we're out here working. We're a part of a local things coming together. Our revolution, DSA. Those are kind of the big ones in our area that we're working on building up. And in other areas, there are other things. Fight for 15 is another big one. Move to amend. The list goes on. We got $15 an hour finally in the cities, and hopefully we'll have it here in Rochester soon. So we're making the progress. We're not just protesting. I appreciate the resistance against Trump, but this isn't about resistance. This is about moving forward. I like to tell people I don't lean left or right. I move forward as a progressive. And that just means that I focus on what the solutions are. That's the important thing. And this isn't a line. I know this sounds so political, but it's not. I do it with my work. When I got my construction, when I was a licensed contractor, instead of building new homes, I was a remodeler. And I found I loved it, getting into the walls and figuring out what's wrong and making it different from what's already there. And then when I started working online, doing websites and stuff, I found that I was really good at troubleshooting. People would come to me, oh, our website's down, it's messed up. And I would find the solution, whether it was my solution that I had to come up with or whether it was one that I had to research and find. But the solution was the only end result that we were looking for. And it should be the same thing in our government. If something's not working, then we keep changing it until it does. And that's it. It shouldn't be that hard. Our values as people are pretty straight down the middle. I know there's a lot of nuts on one side, a lot of nuts on the other, but between all those nuts, we can kind of figure out where people are crying from, because that's really what it's all about. It's about their own insecurities, their own either greed or unhealthy behaviors that feed them to want to infringe on other people and say they don't deserve the same kind of lifestyle that they do. And it's just not the way it works. As a collective, as human beings, we have a responsibility to the hive, or we're not going to be here much longer.
Well, Johnny, that's well said. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak about a whole bunch of topics. And hey, best of luck. And please keep me updated all the time. And thank you
Absolutely.
so much for the discussion.
You bet.
Thanks, Johnny.
All right. Bye-bye.